On the 21st of September of this year, over 300,000 people gathered in New York carrying the signs and banners of gentle dissension. The People's Climate March was the single largest call to action on climate issues. When hundreds of thousands of people come together around an issue, and with their combined gravitas, for a fleeting moment collective attention is at once pulled to them. And for that moment we have the opportunity to finally heed what scientific evidence has been indicating for years. The conversation about climate change has, in the United States, been one of seemingly conflicting ideas and blurred factual references. Since the concept entered our media, there have been supporters who say that climate change is in fact happening, but that human activity has not contributed to this change. Contrarily, there have been people who say that climate change is not happening at all. So what is the science behind climate change? What do we know right now? Far from the days of Copernicus and Galileo, the science behind climate change has essentially reached consensus. The overall surface temperature of the Earth is rising. One statistic from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change states that from 1880 to 2012, the temperature of the planet has risen 0.85 degrees Celsius. Data shows that almost the entire globe is undergoing surface warming. Naturally, the effects of this warming are global. According to a report by the National Academies, for every 1 to 2 degrees Celsius of warming, the western United States could experience 200 to 400% increase in area burned by wildfires. For every 1 to 4 degrees Celsius of warming, there is a projected 5 to 15% reduction in corn yields in the United States, Africa, and wheat yields in India. Climate change does not respect socio-political boundaries. No person on our planet is exempt from the numerous effects and implications. With warming comes a rising sea level. According to a report by the IPCC, the rate of sea level rise since the mid-19th century has been larger than the mean rate during the previous 2 millennia. Sea levels rising is not unheard of in the history of our planet. Have you heard of Doggerland? A 2013 article from the Smithsonian Magazine details an area near modern-day UK and Denmark that was once inhabited land and now exists almost completely underwater. The example of the past climate change of prehistoric Earth is a powerful one and helps to legitimize, in my mind, the scientific findings of the current age. At that time, roughly 20,000 years ago, global sea levels were as much as 400 feet lower than today. The period that followed dramatic changes in the geographic characteristics of Doggerland saw an equally dramatic shift in human behavior. The Mesolithic era witnessed a change in how humans survived on the planet, a change that was heavily influenced by the environmental fluctuations after the Ice Age. The large game hunting of the Ice Age was replaced with fishing and gathering, which was in turn sublimated by the domestication of plants and animals in the Neolithic Age. Thus, we can inarguably see how humans have, in the past, adapted to the changing world around them and survived to flourish on the earth. And flourish we have. The advent and increased implementation of the domestication of plants and animals led to an agricultural revolution and a period of booming progress for human civilization. Our ability to produce more food more consistently directly influenced our viability as a dominant species, as we were able to support a growing population. This growing population allowed for the creation of cities. We developed better technology, better tools, more intricate systems, record-keeping, written language, bodies of knowledge. Highly dependent on the area of the globe, societies tended to arrange themselves in hierarchical structures with pharaohs or kings or emperors exercising military and political control over a territory and people. In the case of the eventual feudal societies of Europe, prosperous landowners were able to gain territory via militaristic means or through purchase, and when that territory reached a certain size, needed to appoint nobles to assist in the governance of the farming peasants. The successes of the agricultural revolution provided the material basis for the development that ultimately led to another important landmark in human history: industry. The 18th and 19th century of the current era marked another period of rapid changes in the way that humans interacted with one another and with their environment. In contrast to the time preceding the development of industry, with small-scale manufacturing a few extra commodities for exchange at a market, the Industrial Revolution consisted of factory-level production in exchange for a profit. People started to leave the rural farms to seek work in densely populated towns. In an incredible shift in human history, the Industrial Revolution allowed the elevation of industrial tycoons to the same wealth status of the nobility and royalty. Indeed, the factories and commodities, the expanding urban areas filled to the brim with wage laborers, allowed for a select number of people in the developed world to accumulate wealth. The Industrial Revolution was a necessary building block for the capitalist society as we know it today. We have come a long way since the days of hunting and gathering. Empires have risen and fallen. The aristocracy that developed during feudal times has all been obliterated. We now live in a world where we, in the United States, can obtain much of what we need to survive without risking our lives to do so. Capitalism, as stemming from the Industrial Revolution, has allowed for immense progress and growth. In science, agriculture, energy, and innumerable other fields, the capitalistic concept of the free market resulted in cultural flourishing for a time. However, as we know, development is rarely linear. Alongside the advent of amazing new technologies, we have seen the immense degradation of our planet at our own hands. In an almost poetic juxtaposition, the system that has aided in the creation of the technologies that we now use to measure the effects of climate change has also directly contributed to it. The Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change's report for policymakers states that it is extremely likely that human influence has been the dominant cause of the observed warming since the mid-20th century. Although many of us may already know how human activities contribute to warming, for the purpose of this conversation, I will summarize the essential concept. Human activities like industry, agriculture, and transportation emit greenhouse gases which trap thermal energy in our atmosphere and result in surface warming. In an unfortunate climate feedback loop, this warming contributes to the melting of glaciers, which emits more greenhouse gases and causes the planet to warm even more quickly. In the United States, our societal reaction to this news has been muddled. In a system where the free market allows for profit-driven industry to thrive, and where, through competition, only those with the highest profit margin are permitted to survive, it becomes very difficult to maneuver away from profitable industries like oil toward more sustainable energy, for example. One argument that I will pay heed to here on the subject of our current system's reaction to climate change states that capitalism, by its very nature, is an unsustainable structure. In one article from The Guardian, Robert Newman argues that capitalism is predicated on infinitely expanding markets, faster consumption, and bigger production in a finite planet. The necessary aim of a capitalistic economy is that people maintain a consumptive pace, which has proven to be detrimental to the health of our ecosystems. The brunt of this climate change bill is consequently left on the shoulders of the consumer, or the individual person, while the United States government makes no substantial effort towards sustainable practices as a whole nation. And as a green wave sweeps the nation and people start recycling more and try to buy eco-friendly, the market catches the scent. Large corporations buy up these green products. Pepsi owns Odwalla. Coke owns Naked Juice. An article by a professor of sociology named Jacqueline Cox states that the current emphasis is on how sustainability can increase profitability, or, in the sanitized language of capital, can add value to a company. The environmentally friendly businesses that have managed to avoid being bought are no less profit-driven. When purportedly green products are made in exchange for profit, when consumers are encouraged to express environmental concerns by voting with their dollar, it is a response akin to treating a symptom instead of a disease. Turning capitalistic consumptive behaviors into a more sustainable venture via things like eco-labeling is a half-hearted way to address changing climate and other ecological disasters. Climate change is a global issue and cannot be adapted to on an individualistic consumer basis. As it has many times before, the Earth is changing, and humans must find a way to coordinate and plan effectively on a mass scale if we want to successfully adapt to those changes.